The hall of the Alliance was vast and filled with shining banners from many worlds. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in curved rows, their eyes fixed on the platform in the center. The chamber was a place where decisions of war and peace were made, where entire civilizations were judged worthy or unworthy to join the greatest coalition in the galaxy. On the platform stood a young human named Morrow. His uniform was plain compared to the jeweled armor of the alien commanders. His shoulders were straight, yet his hands shook slightly as he faced the council. He had been chosen by his people to represent humanity, a species still new to the stars. Humans had proven their will to explore, but now they sought something greater: recognition, respect, and a voice in the Alliance. Across from him stood Commander Vera, the one who had been sent to speak for the old and powerful races. She was tall, her frame covered in heavy bronze armor that gleamed under the white lights. Her voice was sharp, and it cut through the hall with authority. "You claim that your people are ready," she said, her words carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You claim that humans can fight alongside us as equals. Yet all I see is a child who has walked into the council without proving his strength." Morrow held her gaze. His heart pounded, but he would not look away. "Humans have survived every hardship on their world. We endure hunger, storms, fire, and war. We may not be as old as your kind, but we learn fast, and we never stop moving forward. Give us the chance to stand beside you, and we will not fail." A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. Some of the alien leaders covered their mouths with clawed hands. Others hissed or clicked in amusement. To them, the young human's words sounded bold but foolish. Commander Vero lifted one hand, and the hall grew silent. She walked toward Morrow with slow, heavy steps, the sound of her armored boots echoing on the polished floor. When she stopped only a few paces away, she lowered her helmet so that her piercing eyes met his directly. "You speak of survival," she said. "But survival is not the same as mastery. Your people may crawl through storms, but storms do not think. Your people may fight among themselves, but true war is not against your own kind. Do you think that courage alone will carry you when the enemy brings fire from the sky and steel to your world?" Morrow's throat was dry, but he forced himself to answer. "Courage is only the beginning. What matters is that we never give up, no matter how strong the enemy appears." Vera studied him in silence. The hall waited. Then, suddenly, she laughed, not with mockery this time but with a low, fierce sound that made the banners tremble. "You are spirited," she said. "But spirit alone will not earn you respect. You are still untested, still too small for the battles that lie ahead." Her voice rose as she turned to the council, speaking for all to hear. "This human is bold. Yet he stands before us as a boy, not a warrior. Let him return to his people. Let him grow. If he wishes to be heard here again, then let him prove himself with deeds, not only words." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Morrow felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on him, but he did not bow his head. He clenched his fists at his side, his nails biting into his palms. Then Vera turned back to him and spoke words that would remain with him for years. Her voice was firm, final, and sharp as steel. "Come back when you are a man." The sound of it echoed through the chamber. The laughter of the aliens rose once more, but this time Morrow did not hear it clearly. He was listening only to the pounding of his own heart and the vow forming silently in his mind. He turned and walked from the platform without another word. He did not plead, he did not argue. His steps were steady, though every part of him burned with anger and determination. He knew that if he stayed, his voice would be drowned by the noise of scorn. The only way forward was to leave, to grow, and to return. Outside the hall, the stars shone like cold fire in the void beyond the great windows. Morrow looked out at them, and for the first time, he saw not just distance but a path. He would not be broken by their laughter. He would not remain the boy they had dismissed. He whispered only to himself, but his words carried the strength of a promise. I will return. And when I do, you will see what a human can become. And with that, Morrow left the council, stepping into the unknown future, carrying nothing but the challenge that had been thrown at him. A challenge he swore he would meet, no matter the cost. The ship that carried Morrow away from the council chamber was small and plain. It had no banners, no mark of honor. As the stars stretched into lines and the vessel jumped into hyperspace, Morrow sat in silence, replaying the words in his mind again and again. Come back when you are a man. Those words burned in his heart, not as an insult but as a challenge. He had no desire to fade into the background, no wish to remain the human who was laughed out of the hall. If strength was demanded, then strength he would find. If proof was required, then proof he would create. Morrow began his journey across the edge of known space. He visited the scattered colonies of his people, places where survival was never easy. On the frozen world of Haven, he worked beside miners who dug through endless sheets of ice. The storms there could tear a man apart, yet Morrow walked into them without fear. His hands grew rough, his body hardened, and his spirit learned patience. From Haven he traveled to Redfall, a desert world where settlers struggled to live under a burning sun. Water was scarce, and raiders often struck at the weak. Morrow trained with those who guarded the settlements. He learned to move quickly, to fight with little more than his fists and simple blades, and to keep his focus even when exhaustion threatened to crush him. Everywhere he went, he saw teachers. On Eldon Station, he found an old pilot who had fought in border wars. The man was bent with age, but his mind was sharp, and his hands still knew the controls of a starfighter better than any machine. From him, Morrow learned how to fly with speed and daring. He learned that a ship was not just metal, but an extension of the pilot's will. On a forgotten moon called Kira's Rest, Morrow met a group of veterans who had once served in the Alliance Wars. They were old and scarred, left behind by the galaxy they had defended. Yet they still trained every day, keeping their discipline alive. They showed Morrow drills that broke his body and rebuilt it stronger. They taught him not only how to fight but how to lead, for strength meant nothing without the ability to guide others. Time passed quickly, yet the changes within him were steady. The boy who had once stood trembling before the council began to fade. In his place grew a man with steady eyes and unyielding resolve. Still, the path was never easy. Many nights Morrow lay awake in the cold, his body aching from training, his mind filled with doubt. Could one human ever be enough? Could his people truly stand among the great powers of the galaxy? At times the laughter of the council echoed in his memory, and he wondered if they had been right to dismiss him. But whenever the doubts rose, so did the memory of the stars outside the council hall. He remembered how they had looked like a path waiting for him to walk. That memory fueled him when his strength failed. That memory reminded him that he had promised to return. Years passed. His name began to spread, whispered among those who had trained him, spoken with respect among the scattered colonies. The human who will not stop, they called him. The one who carries a fire no storm can put out. And yet Morrow did not return to the council. Not yet. He knew the time had not come. He needed more than skill. He needed to understand not just how to fight, but why to fight. So he went beyond human space. He traveled to alien worlds, where the lessons were harder and the trials greater. On the jungle planet of Thalos, hunters showed him how to track enemies that hid in shadows. On the ocean world of Varan, sailors taught him how to move with the rhythm of waves, to feel balance even when the ground shifted beneath his feet. Not all aliens welcomed him. Many still saw humans as weak. Some refused to speak with him at all. But Morrow endured their silence. When they scorned him, he listened. When they doubted him, he worked harder. Every rejection only sharpened his will. One day, while training in the mountains of a distant world, Morrow stood on a high cliff and looked across the endless horizon. His body was scarred, his muscles hardened, his eyes steady. He no longer felt like the boy who had once stood trembling in the council chamber. He felt the weight of his years of exile, the lessons burned into his very being. And in that moment, he knew. He was ready. The galaxy was at war. Rumors spoke of an empire rising against the Alliance, an enemy that spread destruction across the stars. Fleets were burning. Worlds were falling. The council that had once laughed at him now faced a battle greater than any before. Morrow turned his eyes toward the stars. The path was clear. The time had come to return. He whispered the words again, no longer as a promise, but as a truth. I will return. And when I do, the galaxy will see what a human can become. With that, he began his journey back, no longer in exile, but as a warrior who carried the fire of his people with him. The war had spread like fire across the galaxy. The empire that threatened the Alliance showed no mercy. Their fleets were vast, their armies disciplined, and their weapons more advanced than most had ever seen. Whole worlds fell under their shadow, and even the proud commanders of the Alliance began to fear that their defenses would not hold. In the great council hall, the same place where Morrow had once stood as a boy, the leaders argued among themselves. Voices rose in anger. Some called for surrender, others for desperate last strikes. Commander Vera stood silent among them, her sharp eyes watching as the council fractured. She had faced many battles, but she could see that this war was unlike any other. The enemy did not just seek victory. They sought to erase all resistance. And then, as the council debated, a message arrived. A single human warship had entered the outer systems. It bore no flag of the Alliance, no crest of power, only the mark of Earth. Many scoffed at the news. What could one human ship do, when entire fleets had already been destroyed? But Vero listened more closely. Something about the report stirred her memory. Far from the council, in the cold void between stars, Morrow stood on the command deck of his ship. He was no longer the boy who had once trembled under alien eyes. His uniform was worn, but his stance was steady. His face bore the lines of years spent in struggle and training. Behind him, the crew humans and a few allies who had chosen to follow him waited for his command. This is the moment, Morrow said, his voice calm but strong. We strike not because we are the strongest, but because we are the ones who will not stop. His ship moved toward the battlefront, where the Empire's forces pressed hard against the Alliance. Their massive warships loomed over smaller defenders, their weapons flashing across the black sky. Alliance vessels broke formation, scattered by the enemy's power. It seemed the line would collapse. Then Morrow's ship arrived. The Empire's commanders laughed at the sight of a lone vessel entering the field. They prepared to crush it with a single blast. But Morrow did not attack as they expected. His ship darted forward with sudden speed, weaving through enemy fire. Where other captains followed predictable patterns, Morrow used chaos. He struck at weak points in their formation, forcing the larger ships to turn against each other. His crew obeyed without hesitation, moving as if guided by one mind. The battle turned. For the first time in weeks, the Empire was forced to retreat, leaving behind shattered wrecks of their once proud vessels. The defenders of the Alliance watched in disbelief. A single human ship had done what entire fleets could not. Word spread quickly. Whispers moved across the stars. The human who had once been dismissed, the boy who had been laughed out of the hall, had returned. And he had returned as a warrior. In the council chamber, the news shook the leaders. Some refused to believe it, calling it luck, or chance. But Vera remained silent for a long time. She remembered the boy's steady eyes, the way he had refused to bow his head even when mocked. Now she understood what she had seen in him. Not weakness, but fire waiting to grow. Morrow did not return to the council immediately. Instead, he continued to fight. He led raids on enemy supply lines, striking where no one expected. He defended vulnerable colonies, arriving just in time to drive the empire back. His tactics confused the enemy, for humans thought in ways alien generals did not. He was not bound by their rigid rules of war. He used misdirection, surprise, and courage to turn small forces into victories. Among the common people, his name became a beacon. Colonists whispered stories of him around fires. Soldiers spoke of his daring in the barracks. Even children repeated his name, believing that humanity had finally found its champion. Yet Morrow did not fight for fame. Each time he looked at the stars, he remembered the council hall, the words spoken to him, and the vow he had carried through exile. He did not fight to prove the council wrong. He fought to prove that humans deserved their place among the stars. The war grew larger. The Empire gathered greater fleets, determined to crush the alliance once and for all. The council called for every commander to return, to prepare for the battles ahead. And at last, Morrow answered. His ship turned toward the capital world, the same place he had left years ago. When he entered the council hall once more, silence fell. The banners of many worlds hung as before, but now the eyes of the leaders did not carry scorn. They watched him with caution, with respect, and with something close to fear. Commander Vera stepped forward. She looked at Morrow carefully, as though seeing him for the first time. The boy was gone. In his place stood a man who had walked through exile, forged himself in fire, and returned as the weapon his people had needed. The hall waited. Morrow stood steady, his voice calm and firm as he spoke. You told me to come back when I was a man. I have returned. And I will fight not just for humans, but for all who refuse to kneel to the Empire. If you will have me, I will lead. The council, for once, did not laugh. The Alliance fleet gathered at the edge of a ruined system. Wreckage drifted across the black sky, broken ships from both sides scattered like bones in the void. The Empire's forces pressed forward, confident in their numbers and firepower. To the council, this battle was a test. If they could not hold here, entire regions would fall. Among the fleet, Morrow's ship stood ready. It was smaller than the great battleships, but its crew moved with precision. Many of them were humans who had followed Morrow through exile. Some were aliens who had seen him fight and had chosen to stand by him. They trusted him completely, not because of rank or title, but because of the strength they had witnessed in him. In the command hall, the other Alliance captains spoke through the comms. Their voices were filled with tension. Some doubted Morrow still. Others saw him as reckless, a risk in a war where every mistake cost lives. Commander Vera, however, spoke only once. Let the human try. He has earned the right to fight among us. Morrow studied the enemy formation. The Empire's ships moved like a wall, heavy vessels in front, carriers in the rear. Their tactics were strong, but predictable. He had seen formations like this before, during his years of training with veterans. He knew that such strength carried hidden weakness. He turned to his crew. We will not break them by meeting them head-on. We will strike where they do not expect. Trust me, and follow closely. The battle began. Alliance ships formed a line to meet the Empire's advance. The clash was immediate and brutal. Light filled the dark sky as cannons roared and shields shattered. The larger Alliance ships struggled to hold the line, their defenses breaking under the enemy's endless fire. Morrow gave the order. His ship broke from formation, moving swiftly along the edge of the battlefield. At first the other captains shouted at him, accusing him of abandoning the fight. But Vera, watching from her own command deck, only narrowed her eyes. She understood what he was doing. Morrow's ship slipped behind the Empire's wall. His crew worked without hesitation, firing at weak points, targeting engines and weapon systems instead of armor. Each strike caused confusion in the enemy formation. A massive cruiser turned to block him, but Morrow outmaneuvered it, drawing its fire into its own allies. The Empire's fleet began to falter. Their wall no longer held steady. Holes opened in their lines as ships tried to adjust to the unexpected threat. The Alliance captain saw the chance and pressed forward. "Push now," Vera commanded. "The human has broken their shield. Strike with everything you have." The Alliance surged. Their ships poured fire into the gaps Morrow had created. The Empire, caught between the main assault and Morrow's strikes from within, began to collapse. One by one, their vessels turned, retreating into the darkness to escape total destruction. When the last of the enemy ships fled, silence filled the comms. Then cheers erupted across the fleet. For the first time in many long months, the Alliance had won a clear victory. On his ship, Morrow stood quietly, his eyes fixed on the fading lights of the enemy retreat. His crew celebrated, but he raised a hand, reminding them to stay steady. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The Empire will return, stronger than before. But today we have shown them that humans, and all who fight with us, cannot be broken." In the council hall, news of the victory spread quickly. The leaders who had once mocked him now spoke his name with respect. Some called him reckless, but none could deny the results. A single human ship had turned the tide of battle when all seemed lost. Commander Vera, returning from the field, faced Morrow once more. She studied him, her expression unreadable. "Your tactics were dangerous," she said. "Another captain would have been destroyed." Morrow met her gaze. "But another captain would not have tried." For a long moment, Vera was silent. Then, at last, she nodded. "Perhaps you are not the boy I once saw. Perhaps you are the warrior you claimed you could become." The council, still filled with doubt and pride, could not argue against the proof of victory. They granted Morrow greater command, placing him at the head of a strike force that would carry the war into the enemy's territory. It was not full trust, not yet, but it was more than any human had been given before. That night, as his ship rested among the fleet, Morrow stood alone on the viewing deck. The stars stretched endless before him, cold and bright. He thought of the words spoken years ago in the council chamber. "Come back when you are a man." He whispered to himself, not with anger now, but with quiet certainty. "I have come back. And this is only the first step." The fire of victory burned in his heart, but he knew the path ahead was far from easy. The Empire would not forget what had happened here. They would come again, with greater force and fury. Yet Morrow did not fear the future. He welcomed it. For the first time, the galaxy had seen what a human could achieve. And this was only the beginning. The victory at the ruined system spread across the stars. Colonies whispered of hope, and soldiers spoke of courage reborn. For the first time in many long months, the Alliance believed the Empire could be stopped. But not everyone was convinced. In the High Council, voices clashed as always. Some leaders demanded that Morrow be given full command of fleets. Others argued that trusting a human so quickly was foolish. In the end, it was decided that he would be tested further. Commander Vera herself was chosen to judge him, not with words but with battle. When the order reached Morrow, he accepted without hesitation. He knew this was coming. Vera was the one who had dismissed him long ago, and her approval still carried great weight in the Alliance. If he could not prove himself to her, he would never truly be trusted. The meeting took place on a remote training ground, a barren moon covered in stone and dust. No armies stood here, no fleets hovered above, only two commanders and their chosen teams. The rules were clear, a simulation of war, fought with real weapons but limited scale. It would not be a battle to destroy, but a battle to test skill, mind, and resolve. Vera arrived in full armor, tall and strong as ever. Her eyes were sharp, her stance unshaken. She looked at Morrow and spoke in her steady, cutting voice. "You have gained the praise of many, human. But I do not care for whispers or chance victories. Today, you will show me with your own hands whether you are worthy of the place you seek." Morrow nodded. His face carried no fear, only calm determination. "That is why I am here. Not to prove myself with words, but with action." The trial began. Vera commanded a squad of seasoned warriors, disciplined and powerful. Their moves were precise, their strategy tight. They struck as one, each motion calculated. Against them, Morrow led his mixed team of humans and aliens who had chosen to follow him. His force was smaller, but they trusted his every order. The clash was fierce. Vera's warriors advanced like a storm, pushing Morrow's team back across the rocky ground. She fought at the front herself, her strikes heavy and unstoppable. Morrow countered not with raw strength, but with speed and unpredictability. He shifted positions constantly, using the terrain, drawing his team into patterns that confused the enemy. At one moment, it seemed Morrow's line would break. Vera pressed forward, driving him into a corner of stone cliffs. Her voice thundered as she raised her blade. "This is the difference between training and war. You cannot match me." But Morrow smiled, even as the dust rose around him. "No, I cannot match you by standing still. But war is not only about standing. It is about moving where the enemy does not expect." With a sudden signal, his team split, slipping into the shadows of the cliffs. They reappeared behind Vera's squad, striking from unexpected angles. The disciplined formation of her warriors faltered. Vera turned sharply, realizing she had been drawn into a trap. The clash grew closer, harsher. Morrow and Vera met blade to blade at last. Sparks flew as steel met steel. Vera's strikes were powerful, each one meant to crush. Morrow's movements were lighter, faster, deflecting, guiding her strength away. She fought with tradition, with methods perfected over centuries. He fought with creativity, with lessons gathered from deserts, storms, oceans, and stars. The duel carried on until both stood breathing hard, neither willing to yield. Around them, their teams still fought, but it was clear that the true trial was between commander and challenger. At last, Morrow found the opening he had been waiting for. Vera swung heavy, aiming to end the duel. He shifted aside, using her own momentum to turn her strike into the ground. Before she could recover, his blade rested lightly at her shoulder. Not deep enough to wound, but enough to mark victory. Silence fell across the training ground. Vera looked at him, her eyes burning with pride and something else, respect. Slowly, she lowered her weapon. "You fight not as I expected," she said. "Your methods are strange, reckless at times, yet effective. You see what others do not. You make the impossible possible. This is why you win." Morrow stepped back, lowering his blade as well. "I do not fight to win for myself. I fight to lead, to protect, and to prove that humans have a place in this war. That is all." For a moment, Vera studied him in silence. Then she gave a single nod, firm and true. "Then hear me, Morrow of Earth. I judged you once as a boy unworthy of the council. Today, I see a warrior who stands as my equal." The trial was ended. The council received the news that Vera herself had acknowledged Morrow's strength. The whispers that once mocked him now grew into shouts of respect. No longer was he just the human who had returned. He was the commander who had faced Vera and earned her recognition. That night, as the stars spread across the sky above the barren moon, Morrow looked upward in silence. He thought of the long path he had walked, of the laughter that had once filled the council chamber, and of the vow he had made. Step by step, trial by trial, he was proving it true. The war was not yet won, but the galaxy was beginning to see what one human could become. The Empire did not forgive defeat. Every loss they suffered only made them strike back harder. After their failures against Morrow and the Alliance, they gathered the largest fleet ever seen. Thousands of warships, armed with weapons that could burn entire worlds, moved toward the heart of the alliance. Their goal was clear: destroy the Council, crush resistance, and end the war forever. The alliance fleets prepared, but fear spread quickly. Many worlds doubted they could survive such a storm. Even seasoned commanders whispered of surrender. The memory of past defeats still haunted them. Only one voice remained steady. Morrow stood before the council, his presence calm but filled with unshakable strength. "The Empire believes we will break," he said. "They believe we will scatter before their fire. But they do not understand us. They do not understand humanity, or those who choose to fight with us. We will not run. We will stand together, and we will strike as one." Commander Vera rose beside him, her voice strong. "He speaks the truth. Alone, we are weak. Together, we are stronger than any empire. Let the human lead. Let us fight as one." And so, the council agreed. For the first time, Morrow was given command not only of his own ship, but of the combined fleets of humans and aliens alike. The weight of a galaxy rested on his shoulders, but he accepted it without hesitation. The enemy arrived at the edge of the capital system. The sky filled with ships, a wall of steel and fire that blotted out the stars. The alliance fleets formed into position, their banners flying, their weapons charged. Morrow stood at the center of it all, his eyes fixed on the vast armada before him. The battle began with thunder. The Empire's first strike shattered shields and tore through smaller vessels. Explosions lit the darkness, and the Alliance wavered under the assault. But Morrow's voice came through the comms, calm and commanding. "Hold the line. Wait for the signal." His ships endured wave after wave, refusing to scatter. The Empire pressed harder, certain they would break. But Morrow had studied their patterns. He had learned in exile that every wall, no matter how strong, carried hidden cracks. At the exact moment the enemy overextended, Morrow gave the order. "Now! Strike!" The Alliance fleet moved with sudden precision. Instead of holding their ground, they split into smaller groups, weaving between the Empire's massive ships. Morrow led from the front, his own vessel diving straight into the heart of the formation. The Empire's commanders shouted in anger, but their size worked against them. Their heavy ships could not turn fast enough. Alliance vessels struck their weak points, tearing engines and weapons apart. The chaos grew, and the Empire's perfect wall began to break. Still, the enemy fought with brutal strength. Their flagships unleashed storms of fire, destroying dozens of Alliance ships. The field burned with wreckage, and for every Empire vessel that fell, many defenders were lost. Victory was far from certain. In the midst of the chaos, Morrow's ship faced the Empire's central flagship, a vessel larger than entire cities. Its weapons glowed with power, ready to unleash a blast that could end the battle. The Alliance could not survive such a strike. Morrow stood at the command deck, his face steady. "If we take that ship, we take their will. All ships, follow me." He led the charge, weaving through fire that could have destroyed him at any moment. His crew fought with unmatched courage, striking again and again at the flagship's shields. Vera's forces joined him, hammering the giant vessel from every side. Still, the Empire's flagship endured. At the last moment, Morrow saw the opening he had waited for. The flagship prepared to fire, its core glowing with energy. He ordered his ship straight into the line of fire. Gasps filled the comms, but he did not hesitate. "Target their core. Now!" Every Allied ship nearby focused fire on the same point. Light blazed brighter than a star as the flagship's core collapsed. The explosion tore through its hull, shattering the vessel into burning fragments. The Empire's armada faltered, their command broken. The Alliance seized the moment. With renewed strength, they pushed forward. One by one, The Empire's ships fled into the void, their mighty fleet shattered. Silence fell at last. The stars were filled with wreckage, but the enemy was gone. The Alliance had stood, and against all odds, they had won. On the command deck, Morrow looked out at the battlefield. His uniform was scorched, his ship scarred, but his eyes were steady. Around him, voices filled the comms, cheering his name. Humans and aliens together called him the leader who had turned despair into hope. Vera appeared on the screen, her face fierce but filled with respect. You have done what no one else could. Today, you were not only a man. You were a commander of all. Morrow gave a small nod. Not alone. We stood together, and together we won. That is the strength the Empire will never understand. The war was not yet over, but the path had changed. The Alliance had seen what humanity could bring to the stars. And Morrow had proven, once and for all, that a single human could unite worlds against the darkness. The war was finally over. The Empire's fleet had been broken in the greatest battle the stars had ever seen. Though smaller fights still burned on distant worlds, everyone knew the war had reached its turning point. The Alliance was safe, and hope had returned to the galaxy. Morrow stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the quiet stars after the storm of battle. Debris from broken vessels floated silently, glowing faintly in the light of nearby suns. His crew moved around him, tired yet proud. For many of them, this was the first time they believed peace was possible. But Morrow did not celebrate yet. He thought of the lives lost, of the friends who would never return. Victory was not only a reason for pride, but also a reminder of sacrifice. He carried that weight on his shoulders as he returned with the fleet to the capital of the Alliance. When his ship entered the capital system, the people were waiting. Every station, every world, every outpost broadcasted the same message. They shouted his name, they praised the humans, they thanked the Alliance. For the first time, humans were not seen as weak outsiders. They were honored as equal defenders of the stars. The council called for a grand gathering in the Great Hall, the same place where Morrow had once been mocked. The chamber was brighter now, banners of every species displayed together. Leaders and soldiers filled the seats, and the sound of cheers echoed like thunder. Morrow walked through the hall, his uniform still marked by the scars of battle. He did not dress as a hero. He dressed as a soldier who had fought beside his people. His steps were calm, but every eye followed him. He reached the center, where the council waited. And standing among them was Commander Vera. She looked at him in silence for a long moment. The first time they had met here, she had dismissed him. She had told him he was not ready, that he was not yet a man. Now, the hall was silent, waiting for her words. Vera stepped forward. Her voice was strong, but no longer sharp with scorn. When you first came here, you asked to fight among us. I told you to leave. I told you to come back when you were a man. At that time, I believed your kind was too weak, too untested, too unready for war. She paused and looked at him closely. But today, you have proven what I could not see. You have shown us that humanity carries a strength we did not understand. You have given us victory when no one else could. You have stood where even our greatest commanders faltered. And you returned to prove me right. The hall erupted with cheers. Aliens of every shape and size stood, raising their voices for the human who had once been cast aside. Morrow bowed his head slightly. I did not do this alone. We fought together. Humans, aliens, all of us side by side. That is the only reason we stand here today. If I proved anything, it is not only about myself. It is about what we can all achieve when we trust each other. His words carried across the chamber, and the cheering grew louder. Even the most doubtful leaders now looked at humans with respect. Vera raised her hand for silence. She placed her arm across her chest, a gesture of honor among her people. From this day forward, let it be known that humanity stands as equal among us. Let it be written that Morrow, son of Earth, is a commander of the Alliance. The council repeated her words, and the decision was made. Humanity was no longer a guest. Humanity was part of the future. That night, the Alliance held a great celebration. Ships lit the skies with bright trails of light. Music and voices filled the cities. Soldiers and civilians embraced one another, celebrating not only victory, but unity. Morrow stood apart for a while, watching the lights. He thought of the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the day he was dismissed, the years of exile, the endless training, the long nights of doubt. He remembered the moment he returned, the battles he fought, the allies he gained, and the enemies he defeated. And he remembered the words that had pushed him forward, "Come back when you are a man." Those words had once felt like rejection. Now, he understood they had been a challenge, one he had accepted with all his heart. Vera joined him on the balcony, her eyes on the same sky. For the first time, her voice was soft. "You have changed much since that day. You carry the weight of a man, but also the vision of a leader. I respect you, Morrow. And I am glad I was proven wrong and right at the same time." Morrow gave a small smile. "Perhaps you were not wrong. Perhaps I simply needed to grow. What matters now is what we build together." She nodded. "Yes. The Empire will not vanish overnight. But with you beside us, I believe we can face anything." The stars above them burned quietly, no longer filled with fire and war. For the first time in many years, there was hope that peace would last. And at the center of it stood a single human who had turned rejection into strength, and doubt into belief. Morrow had returned, and in doing so, he had proven her right.